course, not all birds are vegetarian, with worms, insects, rodents, and even other small birds making valuable contributions to a healthy diet. Best to take a miss on anything with fur or feathers, but it is possible to buy live foods such as mealworms and crickets from specialist suppliers. Some birdwatchers will keep a culture of mealworms constantly ongoing, but it will take a bit of getting used to. Nevertheless, birds like the friendly little robin will go crazy for mealworms, and many of the best photographs of this species have been taken with the help of a mealworm bribe. The feeding of birds is a huge subject, and as your interest in birdwatching increases, you'll soon become acquainted with the most effective offerings to make. However, this quick guide will certainly be enough for anyone who's just starting to birdwatch or who may be a temporary visitor to the British countryside. Now you know how to get the more adventurous British birds to come into your line of vision. Next on the agenda is a brief guide to identification. One of the most frequently spotted birds in Britain is the blackbird, which is seen just about everywhere and is a great species to start with. There's a famous children's nursery rhyme: "Sing a song of sixpence, a pocket full of rye, 24 blackbirds baked in a pie," which dates back to a time when birds of every description were eaten. But it's only the domestic cat that will find the blackbird appetising today. However, it will take the stealthiest, most skilled feline hunter to catch a young specimen, as blackbird parents are fiercely aggressive, attacking any pet cat that comes too close to their nest. Anyone that listens to the dawn chorus will quickly be able to identify the fluent, melodious song of the blackbird. Visually, the male blackbird is also very easy to identify with his jet black plumage and bright yellow bill, but the female's an altogether duller proposition, with brown feathers and no distinctive yellow beak, and in point of fact she's often mistaken for a thrush. Blackbirds are very common garden birds, but originally this was a woodland species. Rural farmland and city skyscapes are equally popular locations for blackbirds, and in winter the numbers are swelled by an influx of migrant birds from northern Europe. Blackbirds become scarce in the autumn when they disappear to moult, but they soon return with resplendent plumage for the winter. Moving on, the following species are again in some cases as common as the blackbird, but the birds featured towards the end of this section are rather shyer of human contact, and it can often take consistent, targeted feeding to persuade them to come into the garden. When you first set eyes upon a chaffinch, it looks as though it ought to be a very rare specimen indeed. With a lovely blue-grey crown, bright pink breast and rich chestnut brown back, the male is a stunning sight, and although the female is rather duller, she's nonetheless a very pretty bird. The chaffinch also has a wonderfully cheerful, rollicking song that's an added bonus for the birdwatcher, particularly in the early months of the year. In the autumn, large flocks of chaffinches gather together and fly off to the countryside to enjoy the rich natural harvest. Through the winter months, the resident chaffinch population, which is actually in excess of 7 million, is quadrupled as an influx of migrating birds swell their numbers. When it comes to celebrating Christmas, the robin is a great British favourite, and with its pin-thin, spindly legs and warm, glowing red breast, it adorns an abundance of snowy Christmas cards, sending season's greetings far and wide. Although this would suggest that this is a winter species, it's not the case, as robins are visible all year round. Robins are also extremely receptive to human contact and can even be tamed to feed from your hand. Robins can be encouraged to nest in gardens by the addition of an open-fronted nesting box, but it's amazing where this resourceful bird will choose to nest, as old watering cans, buckets and even ancient gardening boots have been known to accommodate a family of robins. The story of the house sparrow is one that's becoming all too familiar in the British bird world. Once, this little brown bird was common throughout the country, but sadly in recent years it has declined dramatically in number. As a species that's always been happy to live in close proximity with man, the problem is most likely to have been caused by increasing levels of pollution, with the urban house sparrow population having suffered the biggest losses. Although the house sparrow has often been taken for granted, in close-up its plumage is stunning. On a more positive note, the house sparrow is a prolific breeder, and noise will continue to be frequent while research is ongoing. The black and white magpie is undoubtedly the bad boy of British gardens, having a fearsome reputation for destroying the songbird population. Magpies are highly skilled, specialised scavengers, and colonies of this harsh chattering species can be found thriving all over the country. As the decrease in songbird numbers is in direct proportion to the magpie's increases, there's obviously more than coincidence at work, particularly as the magpie will scavenge the eggs and the young of smaller birds. Research is still ongoing, but many gardeners will actively discourage magpies, preferring not to wait for conclusive proof. Both male and female magpies have the well-defined black and white markings, and even when they're silhouetted against the night sky, their exceptionally long tails will make them instantly recognisable. The big black crow is a bird with a sinister reputation thanks to its scavenging lifestyle. This opportunist with powerful beak and almost blue-black plumage can make a meal of all manner of wildlife casualties and has even been known to steal eggs and the nestlings of other birds. In fact, the crow will adapt to almost any circumstances, finding food in the most unlikely places, and this intelligent survivor will live very successfully in both town and country environments. Despite the threat that the adult crow can pose to the young of other species, they do make extremely dedicated parents to their own offspring, and crows also pair and remain faithful for life, building large, bulky nests high up in the treetops. There's nothing more delightful than a family of blue tits in a classically beautiful country garden, and as this is one of the most common birds in Britain, many people enjoy the blue tits' gymnastic antics from the comfort of their own sitting room windows. Not only does this stunning little bird provide great entertainment, it's also of immense value to the organic gardener, as the blue tit will voraciously consume a whole host of common garden pests. Hardly surprising then that most gardeners and bird watchers will do their utmost to encourage blue tits to visit. A ready supply of peanuts at the bird table is sure to bring them in, and the strategic construction of nesting boxes will frequently persuade them to stay. As the name suggests, the great tit is the biggest of all the British tits, and is a delightful visitor to gardens everywhere on a fairly regular basis. It's not quite as common a species as the ubiquitous blue tit, but sightings are frequent and identification is fairly straightforward, mainly due to the size and the great tit's distinctive large black cap. This is predominantly a woodland bird, but it certainly discovered the value of well-stocked garden bird tables in winter. However, the great tit will always do far more than just sing for its supper, as they are extremely valuable when it comes to pest control, scooping up caterpillars to feed their young that would otherwise destroy the keen gardener's precious plants. A much prized visitor to garden bird tables is the greenfinch, and as its name implies, the rich green plumage is this bird's most distinctive feature. This makes for straightforward identification of the male, but as the female is much duller, she can quite easily be mistaken for the house sparrow. Another species, the siskin, can also cause confusion as it has similar colouring, but this bird is quite rare and it's considerably smaller than the greenfinch. In the autumn, greenfinches tend to flock together and head for the rich harvest pickings of the countryside, making garden sightings more likely in spring and summer. However, keeping a bird table well stocked with peanuts and sunflower seeds will often persuade them to stay all year round. The lovely markings of the goldfinch and its beautiful melodic song almost proved to be its downfall in Victorian Britain, as it was much prized as a caged bird. Fortunately, the endangered status of this species was eventually realised and the practice outlawed, but numbers are still small, although they are recovering steadily. Male and female goldfinches have stunningly colourful faces, and their beautiful black and gold wings make a wonderful display in flight. Out in the wild, weed seeds including thistle and dandelion are the mainstay of the goldfinch's diet, but twitchers that load their bird tables with black sunflower seeds are often rewarded with sightings of this elusive bird, particularly in the summer months as some goldfinches migrate south for the winter. It's impossible to cover every species that's likely to crop up in the British countryside, but there are some very good pocket-sized identification books, and a copy of whichever one you choose is always well worth having to hand. The next group of birds that we're going to look at is certainly less common than those species just on view, but they're also rather unusual, which can leave the novice birdwatcher wondering what on earth they might have been looking at. Thrushes are charming speckled birds that are closely associated with the country locations. The song thrush, as its name suggests, has a stunningly beautiful voice, but it's the missel thrush that has the most unusual behaviour traits, and this is the one featured here. There are a number of species that belong to the thrush family, and the missel thrush is one of the more unusual visitors to garden bird tables. It's actually the largest resident British thrush, and it's quite distinctive, with white underparts and speckled dark spots. This is one bird that's very wary of human contact, and anyone who inadvertently disturbs a missel thrush's nest will know all about it, as this bird will defend its young extremely aggressively. Missel thrushes are spotted more frequently in country locations rather than urban environments, and it's even known by the ancient name of stormcock in rural communities, because during bad weather it will sing its heart out from the top of trees and church steeples. The next bird, the kestrel, is actually seen quite regularly, and unlike many species it has no fear of roads and busy traffic. At first glance, the kestrel looks rather exotic and is evidently a very effective bird of prey that can be watched with surprising ease.